Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel and welcome back to Disney's Coronado Springs Resorts. Today it's checkout day, so we're going to do a bit of a review and of course an overview of this resort. So if you're thinking about staying here, you have all the information that you want and need to know. So there is so much to say about this resort. Like we spent a lot of time thinking about a lot in the past 24 hours alone. So I suppose we should just start by doing a quick overview and telling you kind of the ins and outs of this place. Disney's Coronado Springs Resort is in the moderate category. What that means, at least here at Walt Disney World, is that it's not the most expensive of the resorts here, and it's not the most affordable either. However, I feel like it's important to note that Coronado Springs has a weird pricing structure. While they do have rooms that fall into what you'd probably expect from a moderate category room, the prices go kind of off the rails. I think you said earlier today that they go over $1,000 a night.
Yeah.
So it's really important to keep that in mind if you're looking for moderate accommodations. I think it's probably because there is such a wide variety of rooms here at Disney's Coronado Springs, but it's also a convention center, which I think is probably part of a few different problems here at Coronado Springs, but we'll get back to that here in a bit. So let's talk a little bit about the resort itself. Disney's Coronado Springs Resort is themed to the culture, vibe, feel of Spanish, Mexican, and Southwest American culture. The architecture is very reminiscent of those cultures and places. We do have a dig site where there's a Maya pyramid and other artifacts from Mayan culture. There's a lot going on here, and I do think that it's really beautiful, especially the grounds of the resort are gorgeous. We spent a lot of time wandering around yesterday, and it was lovely.
I absolutely loved all the cactuses.
Yeah, the cacti.
I like plants.
And they have some beautiful plants here. Like, there's no getting around that. They also have amazing music that is pumping through the entire resort, which really just keeps you in the mood as you're moving through the resort, and we think that that's fantastic.
Yeah, I think the music definitely adds to the ambiance of the space. It's not loud either.
No, it's like, just there, so you can definitely hear it. And if you watch our check-in day vlog, you'll probably have an opportunity to hear some of the music. It's just there in the background. You can kind of enjoy it. It puts you in the mood. And let me just say, there are a lot of sections of this resort as you're wandering around that are like mood lit, and then there are fountains, and the lighting is amazing, especially at night. It feels just nice, kind of upscale and romantic.
Yeah, it seems like they actually put thought into it, and they just didn't put like lights here because someone could trip.
Yeah, it's like
it's done intentionally. It feels like.
Yeah. Now, this resort has two main sections. There's an area of hotel rooms, and they're all different kinds. At first, I was going to say like it's the moderate rooms, but they even have the family, or not family suites, but the suites.
Yeah, the
in some of
suites.
those. Yeah, one bedroom suites. Yep. Thank you. Those are kind of all in buildings that surround this waterway in between. And then there's the tower, and the tower known as the Grandestino Tower. That's where you're going to find your lobby. It's where you're going to find your bars and restaurants and your shops. They're all going to be in that area. Now, if you're familiar with Disney's Caribbean Beach Resort and Disney's Riviera Resort, then you'll kind of understand the layout of this place because it's very similar, the combination of the Riviera and Caribbean Beach.
Yeah, it's like dead on.
It's probably what that area wanted to be when they built it, but nonetheless, that's a conversation for another day. Although we'll get into it a little bit more here in a second when we review the resort. But in terms of layout, that's what you have to expect. You're kind of wandering around a body of water, although they do have bridges that lead across the water and to a restaurant that's located in the middle of that body of water too. So that's really nice. It's an easier way to get around. Now, like I said, this resort is big and spread out, and so there are multiple bus stops at this resort. Those bus stops will be located on the outside of the resort. So basically along the road that leads around. Like I said, multiple bus stops, which means that you will have to wait to go all the way around to each of them before you get to your park. This is something that I think is important to keep in mind, especially if you're thinking about visiting the theme parks, as it will take a little bit of extra time, especially depending on where you're staying. If you're staying at one of the first bus stops, it's probably going to take you around 30 minutes to get out of this resort before you even make your way to the park that you're planning on visiting. And that's something you want to make sure you're taking into consideration when you're planning your days. Don't want to stay here if you want to sleep in.
Now here's my question though, or your thoughts on this. When we're talking about the loops, I immediately think of Saratoga Springs. Saratoga Springs does the exact same thing. It has a huge loop of bus stops throughout the resort space, and then it heads to the parks.
The same will also be true for Disney's Old Key West Resort.
Right. Now, considering this layout and the buildings being the sizes that they are, housing the amount of people they do you think people here would run into the same issue where if they're on the last stop, there's a good chance that they're not even going to be able to get on the bus? Do you think the bus will be filled before bus stop 5 or 6 and then heading out to like the Magic Kingdom?
So that's a really good question. I don't know offhand how many rooms there are at this resort or how many rooms are served by each bus stop.
Yeah.
So I'd have to look a little bit more into that. We didn't visit the parks during this stay, so I can't speak to that. However, I do think it's important to keep in mind that that is something that can happen, especially if you're staying at one of these resorts. The resorts that have multiple bus stops, yeah, there's a chance that you're going to run into a problem where the bus is full, especially if you are someone who is in an ECV or a wheelchair, because there are very limited spaces on each bus for wheelchairs, ECVs, and other mobility devices. So I do think it's important to take that into consideration when, again, you're planning your trips, deciding on where to stay. I will say that we did just discuss this a little while ago in a video where we talked about if it's possible to rope drop Magic Kingdom staying at Disney Saratoga Springs Resort. So we do have a video about that. I will link it in the description down below. Of course, this isn't Saratoga Springs, but it's a very similar layout, and I do think it's a conversation worth having, especially if you're staying here. So.
Yeah, and I think, now that I think about it even more while we're in the middle of this, I think you might be okay. Because Saratoga Springs, you're running 3 stories tall for majority of their buildings, and here it's only a few 3-story buildings. So I think you might actually be okay. However, I think you're going to know the vibe on day 1.
Yeah, and I think it's important to keep in mind too that this is also a convention center. So there are a lot of people who are here to be here, and they may or may not be taking advantage of the theme parks. So that's an important thing to keep in mind as well.
That's a huge point and probably the segue to their next point.
In fact, it is. So another thing that we need to talk about, and I think it's really important to add this to the conversation really early on, is that this is a convention center as well. Now, Walt Disney World has multiple convention centers here at the Walt Disney World Resort. However, I don't feel like any of them are as invasive as they are here at Disney's Coronado Springs Resort. So keep in mind, there's a convention center over in Disney's Contemporary Resort. There's one over in the Swan and Dolphin, which isn't owned and operated by Walt Disney World, but nonetheless, it's still there right in those Epcot area resorts. This one, I feel as though it's right there in your face. And it's probably because it's located right in that main area, near the Grand Destino Tower, near the lobby, near all of the dining options, especially the affordable dining options, those counter service options here at the resort. And so I think it's really important to keep in mind that some elements of being here at a Disney resort that you might enjoy aren't necessarily going to be available to you in the same way because of that convention center. For example, as we were wandering through that area yesterday, we saw like tons of people working on their laptops, on conference calls in the area that would otherwise be the waiting area for the lobby. So, you know, if you got here, you don't really have any place to be, you just want to hang out inside while you wait for your room to be ready. There was nowhere to sit. There was nowhere to be yesterday.
God forbid you had a large family.
Yeah, that's something that I definitely think is important to take into consideration. Also, if you want to step out of that work environment, I don't think that this is the resort for you because it definitely doesn't feel like you have left any sort of work environment. You're definitely surrounded by corporate speak and people tapping on their laptops and people on their conference calls wandering through the resort. This is something that we saw last night as well. So, I mean, it kind of killed the vibe for me. I know it kind of killed the vibe for you a little bit.
Oh, I am not a fan.
Yeah.
Absolutely not a fan. When you're on vacation, and unfortunately, it's right in your face here that it's not a vacation vibe, which is understandable. Like, I can't be mad at that. However, I think you, the people, need to definitely know that going into this place. If your goal is to come on a vacation and truly unplug from work, this is not the hotel for you.
No,
Not at all.
I don't think so.
And this wasn't even a big convention time.
No, which I think, okay, so here's another thing that's kind of difficult when it comes to staying in one of these resorts. I don't think it's very easy to see when a convention is happening. I know that there are some big conventions that are known for happening at places, you know, like you hear about it all the time, but we have run into a few here at Walt Disney World that have been a little bit invasive to the vacation vibe.
I mean, let's break it down for a second. I mean, Yacht and Beach Club had one going that completely enveloped the boardwalk itself. Like half of the boardwalk was consumed by the convention.
And when he's saying the boardwalk, he means the entire walk around
A good half of
the
it.
yacht, beach, and boardwalk resorts.
Yeah.
And it was like, the thing about that really bothered me, which we did not see here, fortunately, but over at that one, there were like golf carts
Yeah.
that were
Shuttling people.
and they were riding so fast, and it just like, it just felt uncomfortable. But that's a conversation that we could probably get into more later. I don't want to get too off the rails with this.
But yeah, I definitely want to say that one of the redeeming factors of that exact concept and concern, if you are staying here, is that the tower is attached to the convention center and is attached to the eatery and even has like an undercover walking path to a section of the resort. So I feel as though if you're probably here for a convention, you're probably in those areas. Because when we're on the opposite side of the resort, we're not seeing the same people for the convention out this far.
No, while there might be some people wandering back to their room, it seems like most of that convention stuff is
over
like
there.
all consolidated
Yes.
into that one area, which is great because we don't have to really deal with any of it back here. However, the downside is that if you want to go get your coffee, hang out in the lobby, go to any of the lounges or restaurants, there's no escaping it. And it actually does. I know, I'm going to say one last thing about this. I'm sorry. I know we're going on with this for a little bit longer than I originally intended, but I do think it's an important thing to keep in mind when at this resort. Even when we were having lunch yesterday, we were kind of sat off in a back corner, and someone from the convention came over and started asking people if they could move so that they could all have tables together. So yeah, didn't like that.
No, didn't like that at all. And we're talking like 15 tables? Because I mean, she had a stack of
Yeah, it was like a
table
whole
labels.
section of the counter service location.
I'd say a quarter of it.
At lunchtime. But okay, moving on from that, because I know there are some of you who are like, really? Can we talk about something else?
Yeah, merchandise.
Merchandise, yes. So they do have a shop here at this resort. It was pretty good size.
It was huge.
Yeah. They do have a lot of different merchandise available, just like you'll find at any other Disney resort. I did like that they had some of the new stuff. They had at least 2 new lines of merchandise here available for purchase, which I think is fantastic. They also had a lot of other things that you would expect to find. So you can find some little clothing options. Oh, actually, it's 3 new lines of merchandise, now that I think about it. Sorry, I think it's a big deal.
I think it is a big deal, especially considering we sometimes talk about the ability to obtain merch without going to the parks.
Yeah.
Or you realize you forgot something that you wanted to buy at the parks and couldn't, and then you realize you can actually get it at your hotel room. or hotel merchandise location,
So,
which does matter.
yeah.
And there was even some stuff that was a little bit older, however new.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So like new
they had
Pirates of the Caribbean stuff.
Yeah,
anyways.
they had a lot available.
Yeah.
So that's nice. They did have some merchandise for this resort, but I will say that it was lacking a little bit. That said, they are bringing out new lines of merchandise for the resorts, so maybe this one is just kind of like holding on to a few items before their new merch launches. We'll just have to wait and see. To breeze through dining options, which we're gonna do just really quickly, we do have a lot of options available at this resort, but just like the pricing scale for the resort rooms themselves, dining is a little bit tricky here because pricing is all over the place and quite frankly, overinflated. So we do have a coffee shop that's only open until 12:30. Then there is a counter service restaurant available. Pricing at this restaurant is, at least in my opinion, a bit out of control with items definitely $3 to $5 more than you'll find them elsewhere, even for very specific food items like Mickey waffles that are served at resorts around Walt Disney World. There are also table service restaurants here, which is fantastic to have table service available at a moderate. It's not as common to find so many table service restaurants as you will find here. There are so many. There's the Maya Grill, the Three Bridges, Rick's Sports Bar. So there's a lot available here. However, it's important to keep in mind that the pricing here is a bit much, at least in our opinion.
Yeah. And I want to include too, one that was left out was Toledo's Steakhouse, which is up in the tower. It's actually closed on Mondays and Tuesdays.
Yes. So it's important to keep that in mind, especially if you are thinking about enjoying that dining location. If you're here on Monday or Tuesday, you're out of luck.
And I definitely want to add to the fact of the overinflated prices. I sat down last night and started doing some serious comparing. It's $3 to $5 more expensive for the exact same items here as they are elsewhere, which makes absolutely zero sense to me, other than Disney unfortunately has taken advantage of the convention center vibe and people coming in and out.
And that's something that you will see sometimes elsewhere, not here at Walt Disney World, but wherever else. You will see that food is less quality and the price is higher at convention centers. Definitely get that here. The thing that I think is a little bit crazy is that's not necessarily true at other convention centers here at Walt Disney World.
It's not.
So I don't understand why that's the case here, and quite frankly, it rubs me the wrong way. I don't like the fact that if you happen to be staying here for whatever reason, you're going to be paying more. This is immoderate and it should be priced appropriately, and it's not. So I do think that that's important to keep in mind. I know there are a lot of people who will plan food at their resort into their vacation, and we'll have a resort day, we'll get some food at the pool bar. That's something that you won't necessarily want to do if you're staying here. In fact, I wouldn't recommend it. I would recommend that you eat elsewhere, or if you're gonna do a resort day, maybe hop on a bus, go to a park, and head to a different resort altogether and eat there. Because honestly, the pricing is high compared to not only value resorts, which have a lot of great options at affordable prices, but even compared to other resorts like the brand new Disney's Riviera Resort that has some of the best quick service here at Walt Disney World. You're paying more here for a lot less quality, at least in my opinion. But now let's talk a little bit about the room itself. Now I have to tell you, I actually really liked this room.
Yeah, I did as well. Love the color palette.
Isn't it so nice to not have sterile white?
Yeah, it's nice and warm and it's inviting. It is still white. However, it has the splash of color that I enjoy. And I love all the Three Caballero vibe to it.
And it definitely ties the inside of the room to the outside as well with these warm colors. And that's something that I think Disney resorts desperately need, especially as they become updated. They've been doing a lot of white and clean aesthetic. This still has that clean aesthetic, but we've got yellows and browns and oranges, which matches the outside of the building. And I think that is fantastic.
Yeah, and I think they almost did something similar to this, please correct me if I'm wrong, with Caribbean Beach's more updated style where they went with like light blues and whites and stuff like that. However, it matches the outside aesthetic with the brighter colors,
Yeah.
so it works. But like here, this is perfect.
This is perfect. It's exactly what you want from a resort, where it's got some theme, but it's not too in your face. It doesn't feel overwhelming. It's nice. So I definitely like that. In terms of the size of the room, it's pretty standard for what you would expect. We felt like there was plenty of room to move around. There was plenty of room in the bathroom, and the updated kind of bathroom vanity area is great. Lots of space in there, lots of light. This whole room does have a lot of light. And Russ's favorite quality of this room, the ceiling fan.
Oh yeah, that's huge. I wasn't sure where she was going with it. Because there's a couple things I really like.
All right, so what are some of the things that you really like about the interior of this room?
Okay, so this is crazy. I just came to this realization just now.
Okay.
Literally in the middle of the video.
I don't even know what he's gonna say.
Right. So the layout is like a value, but it's bigger.
Which is exactly the same to be said for most moderates. The layout's going to be like a value, but just with a bit bigger space. So we do have 2 queen beds right alongside of each other. I mean, it's a hotel room, you know?
Right. But now what's crazy though is the first bed is not a Murphy bed.
Correct.
Right? So it's not a Murphy bed, which has, when it's closed, it would have a table and 4 chairs. We don't even have that here. We have just 2 straight up beds, platform beds in particular. I think that's intentional. And that's my point.
Why do you think that's intentional?
Because you're not eating in your room.
Wow.
You're not eating in your room. Because they
I
don't want
think
you
so,
eating in
yeah.
your room. I don't know why. I don't know what it is about this place when it comes to food, but it's messing with my head. Because I like the Murphy bed style with the table. They do make up for it with the long desk office bureau space.
Yeah.
I do love that. But the fact that we don't have a table messes with my head a little bit.
And you know what's funny, now that I think about it, is there aren't even places to really enjoy food out in the wild in this resort either. So while there are tables by the pool, there are only a few tables by the pools, and there aren't any tables or anything like that throughout the resort, at least that we noticed last night. There are some benches, but no tables. Like at Caribbean Beach, there are a few like picnic tables, like areas with picnic tables, for example. There aren't any of those here, at least not that I noticed. So it does seem, sorry, I'm a little bit far back. It does seem, now that you say it, like the intention is to go to one of the many restaurants and not eat here in the room, which I will also say another thing that this resort does not have that disappoints me, and I'll explain why, is a microwave. Now, I understand that most moderates don't have a microwave, and it's important to keep that in mind. However, with the price of food here at most of these restaurants, and with the size of this resort being what it is, I feel like it would serve this resort well to have a microwave, especially because there's so much room here for it, to have a microwave so that you could bring your leftovers back home and warm them up.
Right.
Because you just paid, you know, $25, $30 for fajitas.
Well, and that's the thing. When it comes to mobile ordering, you only have 3 bridges, and
That's it.
That's it.
You can't mobile order at the quick service here.
So even if you were to mobile order at 3 Bridges and bring it back, where are you eating that here?
Yeah.
With a family of 4. You can't eat it in the room. You have to eat it back at the lobby. The lobby's where there's tables
And there's
outside.
such a limited area for
Yeah.
that, especially if there's a convention, because
Yeah.
people are taking up those tables. So I know we keep going back to that, but it does make, so often we talk about how these rooms and everything feel bigger than they are because space is used in a certain way. I feel like at this resort, the resort itself feels smaller than it actually is because it's such a congested area right there in the main lobby and like the heart of the resort.
Yeah.
So there's that. But anyway, back to the room. There really isn't anything else to note about this room, which, you know, I try to comb through these rooms and find things to talk about and tell you about. This room is in fantastic shape. Everything works as it should. Everything was clean. There are, of course, a few dents and dings here and there because these rooms are being used. And if you check out our room tour, which of course I suggest if you're thinking about staying here because there's so much that we go through in that room tour, the biggest problem that I have with this room, same problem I have with most rooms, is that on the side of the bed, one of the beds, it is very tight against the wall, and with the sliding doors that they have to separate the bathroom area from the rest of the room, there are these handles that I feel like they're a disaster waiting to happen. So I do think that it's a little tight, not necessarily the most accessible, but that's something that we talk about with a lot of different rooms. So it's pretty standard for a moderate, but that's the least favorite thing that I have about this room.
Yeah, the only fix I had for it, because I actually slept on that side intentionally last night, was to close the door halfway. You close that
is
one.
kind of a good solution.
I only closed that one side of the door, and I mean it wasn't much, but it gave me a little bit more space.
Yeah.
To get in and out of the room, and plus you still had the light on from the outlet to see it in the middle of the night.
That was another feature that this room had, which not all rooms have at all hotels, but I love it. It's a little night light that is just in the outlet itself. So you have some light to move about. It's not bright enough for you to be like awake, you know, like it's not going to cause a problem, but it is just enough light to move throughout the room without stubbing your toe or running into a door. So I think that that's great. Is there anything else that was notable or that you liked about the interior of this room?
The one thing I did like is they still went with the pocket door, although still confused the crap out of me for some reason to get it open and closed once it was flush with the wall.
Yeah.
But it does save on space. But I like the double vanity. It gives you know, you and your family a chance to be able to at least move a little bit faster in the morning and at night when getting squared away. Yeah, that was definitely on the top of my list. For whatever reason, the ceiling fan in the shower room usually works on like a sensor, but like, it wasn't working right.
Fan.
Yeah, the exhaust fan wasn't exactly working right, so like you'd have to like hit it to like turn it on, and it would only be on for a few seconds.
Yeah, I don't know what was up with that. But it wasn't really a problem. Things didn't get too steamy or anything like that.
No,
it did its job.
It worked fine.
But that was just something kind of notable. But other than that, I think that this room was absolutely fantastic. Plenty of space. It's got the beverage cooler, which I think is great. Although, as I've said before, I wish it was a regular mini fridge, but this is pretty standard now. In terms of location of this room, so we are in building 7A in room 7159. I have to say, pretty great location. It's right next to the pool. It's not a spectacular section of the resort, but I don't feel like any sections of this resort are.
I think this is a great location.
Why do you say that?
Because you said next to the pool. We're not next to the pool, which is the dig site.
That is true.
When you're saying the pool, I think some people would think the dig site. However, we are close to it, but we actually have a separate pool that's actually closer than that, which was actually really nice. I mean, it was just a short little walk around the pathing, and poof, you're at the pool, and you have coin laundry right there. Well, not coin laundry anymore, but you know what I mean. You had that right there, and then just a little bit further, you actually had the dig site, which is the cool themed pool.
Yes,
and
it's the
pool
feature
bar.
pool for this resort.
Yeah, the feature pool and stuff like that.
That's also where you find the arcade and a playground. What is nice about that, by the way, because it just popped into my head, is that all of it is in one area. So often you'll find the playground kind of in a separate area. There are some resorts like Art of Animation, I think, where the playground is right next to the pool, but this one, it was all right there.
Yeah.
So whether you wanted a little bite to eat or to go swimming or to go in the hot tub or to go and play in the arcade or at the playground, everything was right there. So you really could just wander your whole family over to that area and everyone would be able to do something fun.
Yeah, and I think to even add more to it, they even had a full-blown sand volleyball court.
Yeah.
Right next to it, which is awesome.
Which is really cool.
It is an all-inclusive feature pool that I don't think we really experience in a lot of other places. I mean, you get kind of a mix at like Beach Club with...
Not like this though. Like
No.
The Beach Club pool is something in and of itself, but I haven't seen an area that is so all in one place like this in a long time. So
Yeah.
that was really nice.
But yeah, to go back to the exact location of our room and part of the resort, I love it. It's not the furthest removed from the tower and the convention center and all that stuff. However, it's close enough proximity to easily walk to and from, because you do have access from the bridges. But I like this location, and even if we wanted to go enjoy the beach section of the resort, it's actually just a little bit around the corner. I think it's a perfect spot. To be in one of the other locations that's essentially just as far away on the opposite side of here, I feel you're really disconnected from everything.
Yeah, there are
You're
some
way out
farther
there.
out areas, that's for sure.
There are actually further out areas than even where we are. So I think this is actually a really nice location. I just love the ambiance of this place. I don't know why.
Yeah.
Like, I just heard because they're actually doing construction real quick outside of our room. They're replacing some of the concrete walking paths, and it just reminded me of like the walking paths, and like they clearly brought some people in that did like arboretum stuff and like really brought in some cool plants and rock features, and it's such a nice walk during the day because of the different colors contrasting, and even at night with the lighting and stuff.
Yeah, it's really
It's just so nice, and it's just so hard to like that, but also have so much trouble because of the convention and stuff like that. It's tough, man.
I will say though, one thing before we kind of move on and wrap this up, because Russ is really hitting on that, exactly my feelings when it comes to this resort. I think the only downside to this location, and this is probably true for other places as well, especially if you parked a car, which you can park relatively close to your hotel room, which is another great feature if you're going to be driving, is that it's very windy. There's really no direct paths. And this isn't because of the construction that's happening on some of the paths, just the way that the layout is anyway. There's really no direct path just kind of around the building and out. You do have to do a little bit of winding, a little bit of doubling back. So even if you are parked super close to your room, it's a walk to get back to your car. But with that said, let's give our overall thoughts on this. So I know you kind of already touched on your thoughts, and I mean, I feel the same way. I do feel like this place there's so many great things about it. I love the theming, I love the ambiance, I love the attention to detail and how the color palette gets pulled into the rooms, which I think Disney desperately needs. The whole resort is clean, the rooms are clean, it feels welcoming, you know?
Yeah, and I think one thing we definitely didn't touch on that I want to real quick is the art in the lobby
it's
area.
so
And
nice.
in all honesty, all throughout, even in the playground, if you watch our check-in video, like, they took the time, and some of it is just absolutely gorgeous.
Yeah.
It's absolutely beautiful, and they took the time to do it the right way.
It doesn't feel rushed.
Not at all.
This resort does not feel rushed at all.
No. They took the time and they used up the budget to its fullest extent to build it, and I think it shows. So.
But in terms of a Walt Disney World Resort hotel, do I think that you should stay here? Do I recommend that you stay here? Probably not. The reason I say this is because there are so many things about this resort that are amiss for me, and I don't think that they're going to be efficient for you and your family if you are staying here and you want to do a Walt Disney World Resort vacation. And of course, we've touched on this in this lengthy conversation, but just to kind of sum it all up, the resort itself is out of the way. We're in the Animal Kingdom area. We do have multiple bus stops in order to just get out. And just briefly, the situation getting out of this resort property is a nightmare. So traffic is definitely a thing that you're going to be dealing with, whether you're driving yourself or you're taking a bus. There was quite a backup yesterday, and honestly there was a backup every time we tried to enter or exit this resort. So that's important to keep in mind if you're considering spending time in the parks. Unfortunately, you don't have any other transportation options from here, so a bus is going to be the way, or you're going to be driving yourself. You're still going to run into the same problems, or you're going to be taking a Lyft or ride share, and you're going to run into the same problems. So I think that it just isn't convenient for that, especially when you have such a similar resort over in Disney's Caribbean Beach at such a similar price point, and you have access to the Skyliner, and you have access to so much great food at affordable prices, because Disney's Caribbean Beach Resort does have some amazing food. I know we go on and on about it all the time, and so does Disney's Riviera Resort, which we also go on and on about all the time. So you have access to so much of the same stuff that you would have access to here, just with a different theme and in a much better location if you were to stay over at Disney's Caribbean Beach, or if you want to spring for a more expensive hotel stay over at Disney's Riviera Resort, which I think would also be a better option than staying here if you have the budget for it, which you might need if you're staying in certain parts of this resort. It's a tough pill to swallow, but that's true.
She hit the nail on the head. If you're here for a Disney vacation, I do not recommend you stay here either. I hate to say that like that, because I'm so torn because I love this space in particular.
Same.
And one thing to note that I definitely did not note on when it came to this traffic. So Coronado Springs' location is a very interesting one. It's actually out right next to one of the roadways that gets you out to Flamingo Crossing and to other parts of 192. So this area, a lot of people utilize it to get through and around the Walt Disney World Resort, and it gets backed up really bad. So if you are going to stay here and drive here, I highly recommend you use your GPS. You might know your way around here, but I can't stress enough to use your GPS to help you navigate the traffic situations, because sometimes just a quick U-turn in certain spots will save you a lot of time and frustration when you're just trying to go a short distance.
For sure.
Yeah, like I said, I can't recommend it as a Disney vacation. If you're gonna stay here, just to stay here, it's beautiful, it's fine.
Even then though, I don't think that if you're gonna stay here just to stay here and it's like a foodcation, you know what I mean? Like you're gonna be here and you're gonna eat. I do think that it's important to make sure that you're accommodating for really expensive dining, because the dining here is very pricey. And make sure that you're checking those menus to see if they appeal to you, because they don't have as wide a selection or as wide a variety as you might think for a place that has so many table service offerings.
When it comes to just a resort stay and you're just looking at a hotel resort vacation instead of going to the parks and stuff like that, I definitely also would not recommend this place. I would recommend pretty much anywhere else.
There are just so many other options to choose from, and I do think that those options will be better for you no matter what it is that you're trying to do. But here's the thing, we're in the middle of, well, not in the middle, we're just starting to talk about planning Disney vacations here on the channel. Every week we're posting a different video where we go into the nitty-gritty of planning and trying to figure out Disney vacations and trying to figure out just how to make it work for you and your family. So this is one of those things that we definitely will be talking about in the future. We're going to dig into the different hotels that are here and things to consider when you're planning your vacation and choosing your hotel. So if you're interested in that, I encourage you to go ahead and subscribe so that you don't miss that, because there are a lot of considerations to be made when choosing a hotel if you want to be at the parks all the time, or even if you just want a getaway and it's going to be mostly a resort stay, both of which are great options, by the way, when staying here at Walt Disney World. But this isn't the place for you, at least not in our opinion, if you want to do either. That said, it can still work, and it does for plenty of people, and I do think that you can make anything work. Again, that's another thing we're going to be talking about here on the channel, so don't miss it. Subscribe. But for now, I think we're gonna make our way out.
Yeah, time to go home.
Thanks so much for hanging out with us. We hope that you had fun. Of course, if you haven't checked out our other Coronado Springs videos, we encourage you to do that. If you're interested in other resorts, we also have so many other room tours and room reviews as well. You can go check those out on the channel. Also, like we always say, this is a conversation. So if you've ever stayed here, we want to hear your thoughts in the comments down below. Of course, these are just our thoughts. So share yours in the comments and help other people figure out if this is the place that's right for them. Of course, we're looking forward to hearing what you have to say, but until then, I think we're off.
That's it.
Thanks for hanging out with us.
Thanks, everybody.
We'll see you in the next one.
Bye.
Bye.